Are you a photographer that likes to travel and you're looking for that perfect camera to take along with you? Well, stick around for this video. I just took a trip, took along one camera, and I'm going to share with you what I found, what I loved about this camera, and maybe it'll help answer some questions for your own travel. Now, before I dive into this too far, just let me put out a couple of little disclaimers. I'm a commercial photographer that does a lot of stock photography. I kind of always turn travel photography into some stock work. And these are just my personal opinions. What meets my needs may not meet your needs, and so I get that. The other thing when it comes to travel photography, I think it has to be said that what kind of trip are you going on? If it's a photo trip, if it's specifically for photography, I'm going to take all the gear I can personally take. If I'm driving somewhere and I can put a whole bunch of gear in the back of my car and it's not a big hassle to take it, I'm taking a tripod and lenses and all kinds of stuff. If, however, it's a trip where I'm just going with a family or something like that, and we're going to be on a plane and carrying a bunch of gear is a lot harder, then maybe I want something that's a little smaller and simpler to take, and so the kind of travel that you're doing plays into the kind of gear I think you're going to take. At least it does for me. So this trip that I just recently took with my wife, we went down to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, and of course we had to fly there, so carrying a bunch of gear and schlepping a bunch of cases and stuff wasn't something I wanted to do. Plus I was with my wife, we were just having fun. It wasn't specifically a photo trip. So the X100 seemed perfect for me. Now what I do with this is I've got a rope strap, I put it around my neck, and then I can just, carry it like that. Anywhere I go, this is around my neck. It's not a lot to have to carry. It's lightweight enough that around my neck I can walk the streets of town, I can go wherever I need to go, and it's always right there. Perfect, simple to carry. The other thing that's kind of neat about it is it's not a big flashy camera. It doesn't, it's not a big lens and everybody's like, ooh, look at that big expensive camera. It doesn't draw a lot of attention when you're on the streets of some strange town walking around. So that regard, it was the perfect thing, simple, easy, lightweight, took it anywhere I went. So let me tell you a little bit about this trip that I took. And as a photographer, I can't help myself. I'm always thinking stock, I'm always thinking advertising. So as I'm on the airplane, we're flying American Airlines, and I just took a bunch of pictures out the window, and I thought, you know what? Being that it's a social media age, I'm going to do a whole bunch of American Airline things. I'm going to post them to Instagram and I'm going to tag American Airlines. You never know what's going to happen. Maybe they'll pick up on some of the images, or I don't know. It's all about marketing and branding and, just getting yourself out there. Now, I do want to say when it comes to this camera, you can put the focus mode in airplane mode, and I've never done that before, but I was impressed. I mean, it locks right onto airplanes. Now, the weird thing was, if there wasn't an airplane in the photo, it kind of struggled because it's looking, but while I had airplanes in the shot, the focus was right on. Now, let me address from the very beginning one of the very obvious things about this camera. It has one lens. It has a 23mm f2. This is an APS-C size sensor, so that's kind of a mid-range wide-angle lens, but it's only got the one lens. Now, when it comes to travel photography, are you going to want multiple lenses? In a lot of cases, you probably are. But for me, 95% of the time, this lens works very, very well. Now, I might have to think a little bit differently. I might have to walk in. I might have to walk out. Got to think a little bit differently when it comes to composition, but 95% of the time, I can make this lens work. The other 5% of the time, I'm thinking, I wish I had something wider, or I wish I had something a little bit longer. I had a couple of occasions like that. But by and large, those times did not outweigh the time that I was thinking, this is all I'm carrying. I'm not lugging around a bunch of gear. And if I had to have 2 or 3 lenses with me, I probably would not carry them around like I do this. So what you give up by only having one focal length, I think is somewhat of a benefit because I tended to take this everywhere we went. If we went out for coffee, I had this around my neck. If we went out to dinner, I had it around my neck. And I end up taking more photos, and I'm not missing opportunities because I thought, I don't want to drag all the gear along this time. Now let me tell you a little bit about Puerto Vallarta if you've never been there. I was there as a kid, probably in high school, many years ago, so it's been a long, long time since I've been there. My wife's never been there, but as soon as we got there, it just was a very unique place in the sense that part of it was very touristy, part of it was very unique and colorful and beautiful, and then there were other parts that were, you know, very low income and I mean, and they were kind of side by side. So it was fascinating in that regard. The lighting, the colors, everything was very unique. And so I just had the tendency to just start photographing everything. I took a lot of pictures on this trip, and you know, I'm always excited to take pictures, but for some reason, this little vacation that we took motivated me to take a lot of photos, and I just started documenting everything. Now, typically when we travel, I'll do a little bit of research online before we go, especially if it's a big trip like this and someplace I haven't either ever been to before or haven't been there for a long time. And I'll look at the images that are there and some of the, you know, things that I think are attractive and things I want to go to. And one of the big things in Puerto Vallarta is this beautiful church that's kind of in the center of town. And I knew I wanted to photograph that, and you'll see I photographed it a lot. It was just beautiful. In fact, we were there on Easter Sunday, and we went to church that morning there, and that was quite an experience, and just beautiful. Got to see the guy ringing the bell and the whole deal. But I always do a little bit of research beforehand so that I kind of know what I'm looking to do and the things that are possible. Now, I'll talk more about the church here in a minute because it ends up being one of the highlights of this trip for me. But another thing that was very prevalent in Puerto Vallarta is the birds. There are just birds everywhere. So if you are a bird photographer, you'd be in a little bit of paradise because they were everywhere and they were flying around. And let me say this, this is not the perfect bird photography camera because you need kind of a long lens to do that. But trust me, I tried because the birds were everywhere. Now, of course, when you're in a tropical paradise like Puerto Vallarta, every sunrise, every sunset is just gorgeous. And I had a tendency to photograph every single one of them. Now, another thing that I photographed many times in many different ways was the back side of our condominium just had all these staircases and balconies, and the way the light would come through there in the morning was just amazing. And every morning I would go out there and it just looked unique to me, and I just photographed it over and over again, probably more than I needed to, but I was just intrigued by all the lines and all the stuff. Now, one of the great things about this camera is the film simulations. And if you know anything about Fuji, they're really known for the film simulations. You can dial that in as you're shooting. For me, I don't tend to use them too much. And just hear me out. This is just kind of the way my mind works. When I'm doing certain photographs, a lot of times I can see this needs to be black and white. So a lot of times when I take a picture, I'll see it in black and white, and I'll convert it when I get back to the studio. But as far as any film simulations or anything like that, I tend to like to make those decisions when I get back to the studio and I'm on the computer rather than at the time I'm shooting them. Now, if the film simulations and the recipes are something that you really like about Fuji, fantastic. I think a lot of people like to dial those in and then they're not messing with it when they get back into the computer. I personally like to make the choices on the computer. So I just do the standard mode when I'm shooting. I shoot raw, and then I've got options when I come back. Now, one of the things that I will say when it comes to film simulations and presets in Lightroom and stuff like that, what I found is it's kind of hard to make a choice because a lot of the images I found looked really good a lot of different ways. There are different color simulations and, film simulations, they look like different things. And so what I find myself doing is struggling. What do I want it to look like? It looks good a lot of different ways. And, if you're anything like me, you might come back 3 or 4 or 6 months later and then have a different opinion. It looked better if I'd have done this to it. So that's always one of the creative choices. You kind of got to pick something you like and run with it. Like I said, a lot of times I'll see an image in black and white as I'm actually taking it, and usually when I get back to the computer, I'm like, yeah, I saw this in black and white, I'll convert it to black and white, and I can stick with that. But there's so many different choices these days, it's really just a matter of your personal style and your preferences, I guess, because it can look good so many different ways. Now, getting back to only having one lens, I know Fuji sells some converters that you can put on it, make it a little bit wider, make it a little more telephoto. Personally, I don't have any desire to get those because that's just like having a camera that's got multiple lenses, in my humble opinion. I got to carry more things, I got to put them on and off, and I like just having one lens. Typically, if I ever run into an issue with that, it's because this lens is not wide enough. I've run into a lot of cases where I wish I had a wider lens. Rarely do I run into a time when I wish I had a longer lens. However, on this trip, there were a couple of times when I wish I'd have had a longer lens. We're in a marina, there were some boat shots. It would have been neat to kind of zoom in and take just 1 or 2 of the boats rather than a group of them. However, at 40 megapixels, and I'm not usually one to say, I've got all these megapixels, I can always crop in. I don't like doing that because then you're not really utilizing the 40 megapixels. But what I found when I processed all the images from this camera, at 40 megapixels, you do have some latitude to crop in a little bit. And that's nice because if you need that longer lens, you have a little bit of variation where you can crop in and still retain a nice size file. Now, one of the great things that I experienced while I was in Puerto Vallarta was the light was so pretty. I mean, even in the middle of the day, you could walk the streets, get these beautiful sunlit cobblestone streets, and it was just beautiful all the time. And I found myself photographing anything and everything over and over again. Now, most of the time, the beach was taken up by a bunch of fishermen, so we didn't just hang out on the beach, but we did walk the Malecon, which is what the walkway area is called down there, and we walked that thing all the time. I can't tell you how many tens of thousands of steps we probably put in while we were there. People all over the place, from tourists to the locals. The same girl made my coffee at the coffee shop every day. We had a lot of fun meeting people. And I've made my living for a long time photographing people, whether it was weddings or events or commercial work. I've photographed people a lot, but one of the things that I wish I was better at was like street portraits. That's one of the goals that I kind of have for this part of my career. I'd like to get better at just meeting people and saying, hey, can I take your portrait? I did a little bit of it. I took, some candid type things. I, did a pose thing here or there. The lady that was working in the leather shop, I took her photograph. But, just meeting the people and being a part of that was a lot of fun. Now, the highlight of the trip for me was a little 30-minute stretch that we had. And I told you about the church that we went to on Easter Sunday. And the images that I had seen online before we even went down there usually had this beautiful shot of the church with the bay in the background. And I knew I had to be on the hill up behind the church, and I wasn't sure what that neighborhood would be like, and I knew walking up there it'd be a hoof, and nobody that was down there with us really wanted to do that trip. And finally the suggestion was made, let's get a taxi and go up there. And so I thought, okay, let's do it. And so one of the last days we were there, we got in a taxi. We told the guy, we want to take a picture of the church. I actually showed him the picture on my phone. He goes, I know where to go for that. Took us right to this spot, and I apologize, I didn't do any video footage of getting up there, but there is like a lookout tower, if you will, spiral staircase, metal spiral staircase, and you walk to the top of this thing, and sure enough, you are looking back down at the town of Puerto Vallarta, the church in the middle, the bay in the background, all the rooftops. I mean, it was just perfect. We were probably there 20 minutes early. The sun was still just a little bit high, but it was perfect. I was so excited to take these photographs and to be in the spot that, you know, we just had found it. It was perfect. Now, I was the only one that went up the tower. Nobody else wanted to go up the tower with me. And when I got up there, 23 millimeters, I did a bunch of shots with it, but it was not wide enough. So what I did was I took it vertically like this, and I took a series of, I think, 5 photographs. And then when I got back here, I stitched them all together and made the panoramic that you see here. But for me, that was the highlight of the trip because, number one, we got there, found the spot, and I got the photograph. Now, do I have any regrets about taking this as the only camera on this trip? Not at all. When I look back on it, there is no part of the whole trip where I'm like, man, I wish I'd have had something else with me. It just didn't happen. Anything I wanted to photograph, anything I wanted to do, I was able to do it with this camera. Now, like I said at the beginning of this video, maybe you have certain needs that this isn't going to cut it because you want to do XYZ with it. That's fine. This is my experience, and I was able to document the trip. I was able to do portrait work, scenic work, landscape, travel, anything I wanted to do, I was able to pretty much do with this camera in a simple, easy to carry package. Like I said, I hung it around my neck, no problems whatsoever as far as fatigue. It's not a heavy camera. It just was great. Okay guys, I know that I edited about 150 photographs. I'm not sure how many are going to end up in this video, but I know it's going to be a lot, and I hope you enjoyed them. If you've got any questions about any of the photos, let me know. A lot of them were pretty much straight out of the camera, very little Lightroom editing at all. Now, some of them obviously are going to be a little bit more than others. Obviously, I converted the black and whites, but a lot of them have got very minimal tweaks to them. This camera straight out, even if you're not doing any of the simulations, does a fantastic job. If you get the exposure right, you get the focus right, it's just incredible. So if you got questions about any of them, let me know. If you got comments, I love to hear your comments. As always, of course, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, think about doing that. If you would, I'd appreciate it. Leave me a thumbs up. And as always, guys, I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.